you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. So the impetus for our project was the Metro Rail extension to Dulles. As part of Phase 1, Wheelie Avenue was to be the westernmost station on the extension. And Fairfax County, understanding that, knew that Wheelie Avenue would be a major park and ride center, but they also wanted to make sure that anyone living within the pedestrian and bicycle shed would use non-motorized form of transportation to get to the station. And also, given that there were a lot of developments coming in line with Wheelie Avenue Station, they wanted to just generally improve the non-motorized conditions around the station. So the county completed a station access management plan, and out of that came a list of 39 projects. Some were ranging from, upgrading curb ramps, like smaller scale projects, and some were very large projects, like a $41 million project to create a brand new road over the highway. So the impetus for their TLC application was, okay, we've got this list of 39 projects. Now, which ones do we need to do first? Like, how do we prioritize this? What should the implementation be? So that was the basis of their TLC application. And the way that they wanted to assess kind of the benefits of each of these projects was to use a model called the multimodal level of service. And that was a project that came out of an NCHRP report. And it's instead of the traditional level of service measurements, like auto level of service, it used transit, bike, ped, and auto, and tried to show the interactions between all these modes. And it's actually going to be included in the 2010 Highway Capacity Manual. So they said, can you use this multimodal level of service to say what are the benefits of each of these projects? And then whichever has the greatest benefit, kind of goes first. However, they also understood that Multimodal Tacoma, which was another TLC project, used this FML OS model a few years previously. And what they found was that sometimes with this multimodal level of service, you don't necessarily get big benefits coming out of it. And that's because the model is it's based on these big projects, like the $41 million project has a large benefit, whereas some of these smaller projects they don't really change the level of service output very much. So in the application, they asked us to also apply kind of a finer grain model to the projects. So that's what we were tasked with $45,000. And this is an example of two of the projects that we were assessing. And the one on the left, this is Sunset Hills Road and Wheelie Avenue. It's right next to the new Metro Rail station. The project was about $300,000. They called for reducing turning radii, adding countdowns, and that the existing conditions and then the proposed condition netted no change in the multimodal level of service outputs for any mode. Whereas the project on the right, that's Sunset Hills Road, and Wheelie Avenue is kind of to the right bottom section. That called for expanding an existing sidewalk into a 10-foot shared use path. And also, just to point out, right here is the Washington and Old Dominion Trail. Now that had huge benefits to the PED LOS and one letter grade change to the bike LOS. But when you start thinking about it, well, what is the benefit really of investing almost $400,000 in a shared use path where there's an existing sidewalk and you have a parallel facility versus these very good improvements to a major intersection? As you can see, it's pretty wide. And that will be a major draw for pedestrians and cyclists directly to the station. And the other thing we found by using FML OS was that it works really well for urban gridded streets, but not so well for areas around Wheelie Avenue, which are, medium density to high density suburban style. It doesn't work on unsignalized intersections. There were a lot of other issues. So only 7 out of the 39 projects that came out of the Station Access Management Plan produced any change in the FML OS from the existing to the proposed. So there were a lot of, that first aspect of the project came out with only 7 projects that could be ranked. So the finer grain of detail that we produced as part of the second half of the TLC project was what we deemed our critical model. And the goal behind the critical model was to say, instead of putting in a lot of like synchro inputs as FML OS has, let's bring it down to the basics of walkability and bikeability. And this is, it looks complicated, but this is one part of our critical model, and it's the infrastructure inventory. And it's meant to double as your data collection sheet. And basically, you go out, you assess your existing conditions and put it into these boxes. And then the proposed condition goes into the P boxes. So I think, and we also created a kind of a how-to guide to go along with the model. So I think the thing that came out of this was that instead of having, while FML OS is great for certain projects, for these smaller station access projects where we're not evaluating like a huge number of aspects, it was too much work to get all of the inputs into this model. It was so many synchro inputs, whereas the model that we created, first of all, can work better on unsignalized intersections, on a broader variety of land uses than just dense urban, that it was more applicable to Fairfax County. And the other thing to come out of it was just, you know, models are great, but at the end of the day, it's nice to be able to go out and walk an area and assess it, collect data, and figure out, you know, what needs to be done based on what we know as planners for the needs of biking, walking, and transit.